It's that time again. Today we're counting down on what I think are my personal top 10 new anime from this summer season. Comparing this to my pre-season video, I'd say that there are some major surprises that the season gave us. It just shows us that it's never too late to count something out. Without further ado, let's get the ball rolling. Starting off, we have The Detective is Already Dead.
事件は終わってないぞ名探偵
そうでも私がいる時点ですでに解決したと言えるかな
In my pre-season video, I placed this show as a top contender for anime of the season. Having read some of the source material since then, I stand by my words. However, that would be if we're talking source material, because the adaptation is being quite pedestrian, to put it lightly. The show's definitely a contender in the race for the most polarizing anime of the season due to some creative decisions made during adaptation. That's not to say that it will become a bad show, far from it in my opinion. That's why it's still here on this list. I think that as far as the production side of things are concerned, such as the art, the sound direction and all of that sort of stuff, the show is still amazing as expected. The mysteries are still fun to follow, and I still applaud the chemistry between our main duo of detectives. However, there seems to be something when it came to translating the emotions from the book into anime form. That and the unfocused genre seems not to help matters for the general audience. Overall, I do really like this show, but I'd say that the adaptation can use some work, which is why The Detective is Already Dead is just number 10 on this countdown. Up next is How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom. At first, I had my eyes on this title because of its somewhat different take on the whole isekai thing. Instead of taking the role of a powerful hero on an adventure, here we have a protagonist who settles in for a more muted life as an economist. Yep, instead of the standard action adventure scenes that we've all grown used to seeing in isekai, Realist Hero does what it's advertised to do, giving a more down-to-earth take on the concept of being reincarnated into another world. And it does really give me a refreshing experience. It's interesting to see an isekai through the lens of someone who chooses to primarily employ logic and economics in his rise to the top. The characters are also pretty likable, and I'd say that they're a big part of the experience. But it's not without its flaws though. I personally am a fan of some isekai tropes, but I admit that some may not be too hot on them, like the mandatory harem that seems to be in every show of the genre these days. I also think that the world has been fleshed out a lot better in the source material, but I just chalk that up to the standard compromises that have to be done when a novel becomes an anime. While I'd say there's unfulfilled potential here, I'm content with what I saw out of this anime. Sure, it could be more, and politics is a different beast altogether with its various layers and possibility for turmoil and conspiracies, but this is a show that I have an overall positive outlook of.
普段と変わらない平穏な一日だから僕は家で寝てなきゃおかしい
Number 8 on the list is Tsukimichi Moonlit Fantasy. Now it's time for the more traditional isekai. Well, kind of. The thing is, Tsukimichi works like a more light-hearted parody of the genre. That's the way I see it anyway. It's an isekai that's also a reverse isekai of sorts, mainly due to the parent's background. It follows a lot of the tropes and story beats that have characterized the genre, yet plays around with them wildly in how it does its twists and turns. And I think that makes it such a fun watch for the general audience. Isekai parody is pretty big right now, and Tsukimichi is the perfect addition to that ever-growing library of the subgenre, and I found the most joy in seeing how Makoto and his funny companions interact with the world. Overall, Tsukimichi is the more easygoing isekai of the season that you might want to pick up if you're looking for something to kill time and unwind to.
なんだ
これで終わりだ記憶の幻影の中幸福に溺れて死んでもらおう
When I saw the promo art for Aquatope on White Sand, several titles crossed my mind. There's just a feel to it that any veteran fan would immediately recognize, and having PA Works at the helm further pushes that impression. However, what I didn't expect is for Aquatope on White Sand to be as straightforward as it was. Now, that's not a bad thing necessarily. I'm always up for a slice of life, and the story of a former idol reigniting her passion for the joys of life is something that I did have a good time watching. Helping with the enjoyment is seeing PA Works pull out their A game with how they made the backgrounds and the overall atmosphere so vibrant and alive. The art's definitely the strongest part of the show, and it blows almost every other element out of the water. People have called this a successor to A Lull in the Sea or Blossoms for Tomorrow, and I can clearly see the similarities. If you're a fan of the aforementioned series, you should give this one a try. It's not nearly as dramatic as the flagship key titles that people might associate with the studio, but it's still as heartwarming in its own right.
ようこそガマガマ水族館へ。私ここの館長ミサキのククル。
Coming in at number 6 is Words Bubble Up Like Soda Pop. And now we have a surprise movie on the list. Bet you didn't see this one coming now, did you? For a whole lot of you, the boy meets girl story of Cherry and Smile may be something that's quite familiar to you. Two people coming together, falling in love while becoming each other's pillars of support as they grow together. It's not the rarest anime movie out there, but this one still hits home when it matters, in letting its charm shine and making you feel good. The story develops like various other movies of the genre, but the production and the chemistry between the characters really get a chance to take the forefront here. While somewhat formulaic, the story still had my attention as I followed the two protagonists in their adventure in search of an old record. In terms of visuals and sounds, the film is simply beautiful. Nowhere near Shinkai level or anything, mind you, but more than serviceable enough for what you're expecting to get in a feature film. The charming movie is available on Netflix for those who are up for some feel-good romance to spend the weekend with.
声。
かわいいと思う。チェリーくんの声。お兄ちゃん、お兄ちゃん、お兄ちゃん。あ、起きた。
ガラケー？
Remake Our Life is one of those shows that I was quite excited to watch. I always like the premise of going back in time to, well, remake my life and pursue the passions that I once had. The premise, the relatable setting of the gaming industry, and the art style caught my attention, and the healthy sprinkling of fan service in the early episodes is just up my alley. My biggest experience with a premise like this is with Re-Life, and I'd say that Remake Our Life provides a completely different tone and execution with a similar story. Overall, it really feels like a wish fulfillment story with a super adept and skilled main character. As they say, overpowered but placed in the context of a more realistic setting. I personally still find it a delight to watch, and the good points do click with me. I definitely recommend you try this one out.
僕には何ができるんだろう。
イダテンと呼ばれる戦いの神。彼らは突如この世に現れ魔族を倒し。
What happens when you put together the brains behind Interspecies Reviewers, the artists behind Dragon Maid and Studio Mappa? Yep, it's Idaten Deity's No Only Peace. At first glance, the show immediately looks like the brainchild of the two creators, and if you're expecting a healthy mix of the series associated with them, then you'd pretty much be correct. I've not given the series its proper pre-season welcome, but I'd say that there's not really much to unpack if you're talking about the premise of Idaten Deities. God puts an end to the era of demons centuries ago, the new generation doesn't know of those feats and battles, and it's up to the last member of the old guard to train the new misfits in the looming battle against the resurrected demons. It's pretty much supernatural shonen given a very colourful and wacky visual style thanks to the two creators involved. And of course, some raunchy content, but what did you expect? It's pretty surprising to see Mappa work on a show with this visual style after seeing a common thread among their big hits, but they've done a good job with this, all things considered. I find the show quirky and fun to watch, and if you look closely enough, there's been some clever world building amidst the fighting and the fan service. It might not be the shonen for everyone, but it's something that I'd recommend to seasoned anime watchers.
幼児体系のスーパーバーガー。
ねえ、ここはユートピアなのかな？それとも地獄？
Honestly, I didn't know what to make of Sonny Boy before the season started. All in all, Sonny Boy indeed is a visual spectacle with a lot of thought and meaning put into it. I called Sonny Boy an artsy show, and I think that by this point you can tell the reputation of something like that. You know, a show that is dialogue-driven, filled with some insights and thoughts about humanity to go with its drama, along with visuals that can probably put any non-theatrical productions to shame. It also eschews most of the high-octane action that often comes associated with the premise of being lost in a dimension with superpowers. It takes things slowly and methodically. Yes, Sonny Boy is a slow show and it requires a lot of attention and thought on the part of the viewer. That's to say that it's not a show for everyone, but it does have its niche. And if you happen to fall into said niche, I think that this show can be a strong contender for anime of the season. Talk about a surprise entry. It aired quite late into the season, but Fena, Pirate Princess is quickly becoming the rising star of the summer 2021 season, surpassing all expectations as I can see. And no, the fact that I promoted it on this channel a few videos back is not a reason for me placing it as number 2 on the list. The show's legitimately good in a lot of ways, and it pretty much blew away all expectations I had when I started covering it. At first glance, it seems to be a typical adventure featuring a plucky girl on a quest for treasure. I mean, I felt that way too, until I actually watched the show and got enthralled by the adventure of self-discovery. It really does give some Yona of the Dawn vibes, and I'm sure that a lot of people have pointed that out. But to a lesser extent, I can see some of Snow White with red hair, and I really enjoyed that show as well. What I like about Fena is that I can immediately tell that the show's been given the love and care that it deserves during production. That much can be reflected in the visuals, the detailing, and the background music. For an anime original by Production IG, this is looking very promising, even though it hasn't had as many episodes as most of its seasonal peers. If you're up for an adventure story with some themes of family and self-discovery, Fena, Pirate Princess is definitely worth the watch. And here, my friends, at the top of the list is a show that definitely didn't disappoint. In my pre-season video, I praised the show to high heavens for its unique visual appeal, its enchanting music, bias for Yuki Kajura aside, and its execution of the whole Victorian Europe setting. Consider those expectations met, and I can confidently say that the case study of Vanitas is a legit contender for anime of the season, whether I take into account my personal opinions or not. What starts off as a premise of a mystery slowly unravels into a very multi-layered story about some striking themes, chief among those, the idea of self-worth and guilt. It helps that the characters come with their own complexities and intricacies. Even characters portrayed to be eccentric, naive, or goofy eventually reveal hidden depths, and those work so well with the story that the narrative is trying to tell us. The complexity, along with a blend of serious and comedic elements, come together to create a show that can be enjoyed by viewers of all tastes and interests. Plus, it's got a lot of good-looking guys for the girls. While some scenes have been cut from the manga as usual, I don't think that they really detract from the experience here, in contrast to The Detective Is Already Dead, which I mentioned a while ago. I think the Vanitas anime still manages to capture the magic of the manga in its own way, and that's why I have this as my number 1 new anime of summer 2021.
お前たちの意志に関係なく必ずバンピールを救ってやる
How's your list looking then? Comment below and let me know. I'd love to have a chat with you about it. If you enjoyed the video, don't hesitate to like the video and subscribe to the channel so that you can be notified the next time I upload another video. You may also support the channel via Patreon or memberships, and each contribution will go a long way in allowing me to make even better videos or giving you a glimpse of my video making process. That's it for today. I hope you had fun watching, and I'll see you next time.